Let's start, if I may, with ISSIE. If you've got, there's a microphone right behind you, and then we'll pass it along. Why were you so keen or why did you set up NYJC?
Well, I'd already set up the jazz degree course at Trinity College of Music, and Youth Music asked me whether I would look at putting together something that fed in to the conservatoire level study. They felt that there was the National Youth Choir, the National Youth Orchestra, and all the different other ensemble formations, even the National Youth Jazz Orchestra, but there was nothing for small ensemble jazz. And so and people such as Jeremy, who's here, and various other members of the team who I talked with, Mark LOCKHEART, Liam, we all put together ideas to sort of what was it that they needed, and we've submitted quite a few lots of different ideas about what we could put in place, and the summer school was the thing that youth music were most attracted to. So we put that together thinking it was a pilot, and how wrong we were, because look at where we are now.
That was in 2007, around about that time. And I mean, I know many people in this auditorium are from the summer school, but just in case you haven't been part of the joys of this week, what happens?
Well, first of all, you go online and you make an application, and then everybody gets an audition. So we don't vet anybody during that process. We want to meet everybody because we think it's important that we can be part of their journey. Sometimes they might not quite be ready for the summer school, but then we can put them onto the short course. And if they're not ready for the short course, we've got regional signposting. We're in a position, sort of 9 years on, where we've developed such a network that we can actually put them in contact with people regionally as well.
What's the biggest challenge of running this?
Wow. Well, obviously money, that's one of them. The other is making sure that there is that support network out there in the regions, especially sort of pre-summer school level, so that they're getting that regular input of jazz education. It's very easy to think that a big band is giving you what you need. And also that one-to-one lessons, you know, knowing how to actually learn and be taught jazz is the thing that's missing. It's something that we're really working on. That's why we've got the ambassador scheme. That's why we have professional development. Just so that, because it's not a way of, you don't translate from classical to jazz. They're two completely different grammars, two completely different languages.
Well, ISSIE, thanks very much. I'm sure we'll be hearing from you later on. So one of the things we also wanted to showcase this afternoon is some of the work that some students themselves have done. So this is an opportunity for us to play an excerpt, or actually an actual video, which I'm looking at ISSIE because we need, if you can just cue that, as they say. Well, some of you already know about that video, but before we get to that, that's an example of the impact that NYJC continues to have. Now, in 2014, all the finalists and the eventual winner of the first BBC Young Jazz Musician of the Year came from NYJC. In fact, several of you, and I know are in this auditorium, you're back to attend the summer school this year. This year's summer school, several of the finalists from the 2016 BBC Young Jazz Musician of the Year are also from NYJC. I think that deserves a round of applause. Including the winner. Alexandra Ridout, who joins us now. Where are you, Alex? Yeah, do you want to come? Can you come down? The reason why we played that is Alex will explain in just a moment how she came to collaborate on that song. That song was actually written by her. It's for young people, and it's a particular project which I know she is passionate about. Sorry to drag you from your friends. Where's the microphone? Tell me a bit about the experience of being, you know, BBC Young Jazz Musician of the Year. What was that like for you?
It was going and doing the final was a great experience in itself. Being able to play with such an amazing band with Gwilym's Trio was like one of the best experiences I've ever had. And yeah, and a lot of really good stuff has come out of it, getting a lot of really good gigs and just general like respect. So yeah, it's been really good. Respect is important for a musician, there's no doubt about that. How has NYJC contributed to your musicianship? Well, I started doing the summer school. I've done the summer school for 4 years, and I did a short course before that. So I've been doing NYJC for a long time and doing the regional work. So I've learned a lot of stuff from all the tutors and from doing the summer school. So yeah, most of the stuff I know.
Tell me a bit about the project that we've just seen.
Luckily, I'm very grateful. ISSIE asked me and Jazz Kaiser to write a pop song that was like aimed at 8 to 10-year-olds, I think it was, and it was meant to be promoting internet safety, because what that was like a clip of, say, there was like a group of 3 young kids who just put together a band, and they'd like just put their song out, and then they realized there were lots of rude comments and stuff like that. So it's kind of like promoting the internet safety thing, not to just put everything out there and all of that. So, and yeah, we just worked together to write this song, and yeah, and I haven't seen it before, so it's quite cool.
Well, first of the world premiere, as they say. Thank you so much, Alex. That was great. Thank you. Round of applause for Alex. Now, a man whose name has consistently come up over the past 5 decades, but particularly in the interviews I did earlier today, is the wonderful Dave Holland, who is, of course, the president of NYJC, and he's a bassist and composer. Please give a round of applause for Dave. Dave, hi. Can I ask you, first of all, why you wanted to be president? I mean, you've been president for a while, but what was the draw for you?
Well, you know, like all of us here, I've been involved in aspects of education, and I was coming to England on the invitation of Jeremy Price to come to the Birmingham Conservatoire to do some artist-in-residence visits. And during the early part of that, ISSIE contacted me and asked me if we could have a meeting. And during the meeting, she explained the mission of NYJC and the things that she was working on. And then she said, would you consider taking on the position of president to it? And I said I would be very interested. I was particularly interested because, of course, I'm from England originally, and I learned so much from being here and the musicians that shared their knowledge with me. And I thought it was a wonderful opportunity to come back to England and to be a part of the community here and connect up with young people and try and do the same thing.
What advice would you give to up-and-coming musicians?
Connect with the community, you know. I think it's so important because that's your main source of information and knowledge. And I think obviously we can also, you know, focus on things like work hard, discipline and things like that, but I think the inspiration that you get from your fellow musicians and the people that share the music with you is so important to giving you the courage to continue and the inspiration to continue. And I think a setting like this, which brings together both people of the same generation who can grow together, but then connect up with people of more experience. We're all part of the same community. We're in different stages of the journey. But I think that opportunity is so important, you know.
Well, we asked people or students to submit questions. One of them, of course, is Tupac still dead? which I'm not going to put to any of our tutors this afternoon. But if anyone has the answer, feel free to see me later on. But one of the questions that came for you, Dave, is what is it like jamming with younger people?
It's wonderful, you know. First of all, I think at that stage of playing, you know, there's such an enthusiasm and an emotional engagement, and every experience is a new experience. Every day is a day of discovery, you know. I remember it well myself from that time in my life. You know, sometimes things which, as you know, a more veteran player, you take, oh, that's just that, but you explain it to a young person, they just eat it up and take it and run with it, you know. And seeing that enthusiasm. So jamming is, you know, playing together, is a chance to just really connect up in the real world of playing music together. And for us to, I learned so much from playing with, you know, more experienced musicians. And it's a chance for us to really exchange those feelings with each other in a real musical situation. Yeah.
One of the other questions that came up for you is the one album that changed your life.
Well, I have to point to the very first Ray Brown album. He was one of the great bass players, and I was a bass guitarist in the Midlands playing in a rock and roll band. And I was looking to hear more developed bass playing, and I happened to see his name in the Downbeat Readers Poll. And so I ran out and bought a record, and it was called Night Train with Oscar Peterson and Ed Thigpen. And I put it on the record player, and my life has never been the same since. It was extraordinary. I couldn't believe the sound that was coming out, the artistry, and 2 weeks later I ran out and got an acoustic bass and started practicing with the records, and that was the beginning of a journey that's still going on today.
There is much made of the idea that jazz is about to die, or it's died already, and it's just, you know, in a corner. Yeah. What do you think about the future of jazz?
Well, it's right here. Yeah, the future of jazz is with the young people, and that's why this is important. You know, the music has such emotional power that there's never any lack of people who are deeply moved by it and affected by it, and just want to be a part of it and experience it and contribute to it. And I think, you know, there are challenges to playing this music, both personal and musical ones. And it takes a lot of commitment and a lot of courage. But in spite of those challenges, people still really want to be a part of it. And it does my heart good. It inspires me to see that going on. And I think whenever I'm asked that question, you know, is jazz dead, or what's the future of the music? I'm saying the future is, as always, in good hands, because generation after generation, there's somebody to pick up the torch and go on with it.
Dave Holland, everyone. So another example of the creative use of musicianship is a project created by Asha Parkinson, who was moved by the constant strife and turmoil in the Middle East. And she's brought together a project which encourages, I think, 6 to 12-year-olds, bringing together 9 to 12-year-olds, bringing them together. She's written a choral piece for them, which is going to be performed in January. Is that right? January in St. James's, Piccadilly. Well, we look forward to that. You must keep me informed of that. I might have you on my program. Okay, next. Next to our tutors, we asked the students to submit questions for them alongside the jokey ones, one of which was the one about Tupac. The other one is, will there ever be a boy born who can swim faster than a shark? Again, if you have answers, feel free to share the answers with us later on. We'll start with Jeremy. Jeremy, the question for you is, for those planning on going to Conservatoire this September, what can they do to best prepare themselves for their forthcoming study?
Okay. I think assuming you're going to be really practicing incredibly hard and keeping up your regime of practice, so I'll take that as a given. But I was thinking how to answer this question. I was thinking probably in terms of some advice, I'd say maybe acknowledge the importance of that junction in your life. I think, obviously I'm a great fan of universities because one of them employs me. But also, uncynically, they are amazing institutions that have enormous transformative powers for society. And they take people from all over the planet and group them in specialized subjects and schools of learning. And I think the important word here is peer groups. It's a collection of peer groups who are all obsessed about the same subject and all love the same subject. So whether you're off to music college or any other college, I think this junction that you're coming to is incredibly important. And it's also quite daunting because it's a whole load of new people, brand new people, who are actually going to affect your lives enormously as you move forward. So, and it's quite daunting to have to make all those relationships work professionally and socially. But I would say, think of this as one of the best opportunities to acclimatize to meeting a new peer group and capitalizing on that. And take note that every time you change peer group, they are the main opportunities in life for growth. They really, really are. Whether that's forming a new band. I've got a gentleman on my right here who changed his peer group rather dramatically by being picked up by Miles back in '68. So, I mean, and that was obviously a hugely transformative process. But it also means that you don't lose the peer group that you've just left. You know, you still keep in touch, but being able to be wise and make the most of those new connections and embrace them and not be fearful of them, I think that's a really important thing. A lot of you have started a brand new peer group this week, and look at the transformation that's happened this week. You know, some of you know each other already, but you've all made new connections, and you're going to remember this peer group for many, many years ahead, if not the rest of your lives. And you'll use those connections in your professional life as you move forward. And when you go to university or college, then you know there'll be a huge amount of connections that you'll make from there. But yeah, so the main piece of advice: acknowledge that it's a real big junction, changing peer group, and get used to putting yourself in that zone where you have to embrace new peer groups, because that's the main agent for growth, I think.
Thank you, Jeremy. Let's go to Percy now. How do you go about establishing yourself as a jazz musician in your local area?
I think it's down to contributing to the scene, contributing to the development of the music, and using your own development of your own musicianship to contribute to that field of music. So I think it's finding like-minded people, like Jeremy's talking about, going to university, and being part of that and embracing that and committing to that scene wherever it is. There's small scenes in pockets around the country, around the world, but there's a broader worldwide scene and national scene. We were talking about morphic resonance the other day. Morphic resonance. Just a sharing of knowledge, sometimes subconsciously, but you know, being part of that and committing mentally and physically to what you're doing, I think. Furthermore, Tupac is very well. He co-owns a chip shop in Nuneaton with Elvis Presley, so.
That's good to know. Thanks, Percy. Dominic, your question is, what should you include in your daily practice?
Well, I suppose it's all the things you've been doing all week, really, is the short answer. That you've been doing it, the experience of doing it is what's important. And as everyone has been saying, how you're integrating with other players, you're obviously practicing your instrument, but you're also listening, you're jamming, you're writing, transcribing. Everything that you've been doing is is how you practice, but it's the experience of doing it, which I think is the crucial bit. And I was thinking about like the concert we have later on. And so we've structured a concert, and it's going to be great. But what's great is that all the structure is there, but we've also put into the structure something that we don't know how it's going to happen. And that's part of the magic. No one knows how that bit's going to go, because that's the magic of that moment, that we all live for that moment. That's why it's so important to do it. That's what it's about. The real practice is doing it, playing with each other, and being a part of it.
Thank you. Gareth, your question is, what do you think is the most effective way of transcribing, with or without writing it down?
Well, I'm trying to think. Well, personally speaking, I've done a healthy mix of both, really. I mean, for me, I've always done a variety of ways, just depending on the circumstances around it. I mean, sometimes I do it the best way, which is just you got the recording, you're just obsessed with that recording, and you just go round and round it. And even before you started playing along with it, it's in your head already, really, a lot of it. So that's just a matter of playing along with the record until it's just, you're just immersed in it. And with your favourite solos. And when I was a kid, I did that with horn players, blues guitarists, everyone I was drawn to, without really judging anything I was into. I just learn it. And in previous kind of years, when I've had a bit of spare time on a train journey, I've got a notebook. I've got reams of notebooks and piles of transcriptions I've written down just without the instrument. Just write it down just for reference. So yeah, if you have a kind of mental bank of things that really just soak in there, that are always part of your psyche if you do the proper way, straight from the recording. But I've also got this big archive of stuff from the last sort of 20 years, just notebooks and things you forget you were into. It's quite interesting. You go back to summer of '96, what I was into then, and it's quite interesting. You see what you're into, and it can be quite a good process to go back on yourself a little bit and check in with your old obsessions a little bit. I quite enjoy doing that. Yeah, I mean, a bit of both really. But the best way is the time-honored way of put the needle down on the record and you're just immersed in it. But for me, it's kind of both really. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. Your question is: metronome on 1 and 3, 2 and 4, or a bit of both, and why?
Whoever submitted that question, come and speak to me later. I have very mixed feelings about practicing to a metronome. I remember when I was at school, I bought a metronome and I had it for a little while. And it's a great tool, obviously, it's a great tool for obvious reasons. But the way I feel about it nowadays, I think it's a fantastic tool, particularly if you plan to play music of which the personality of a metronome, which is very, very quartz, very digital, very precise method of marking time. If you want to be involved in music that features that kind of feel, then by all means use the metronome as much as you possibly can in any denomination you choose, 1 and 3, 2 and 4, depending on what time signature you choose. For me personally, much of my practice in terms of practicing time was trying to lock in with the pulse of the musician that I was listening to at the time. When I was buying records and taking records out of the record library, I just tried to get into their groove, and everybody has a different pulse and a different groove, and you learn to develop your own internal sense of pulse. And in time, you learn to develop a way of keeping time. It doesn't have to be stapled quite in the metronomic sense. So I always say it's
it's a very valuable tool for practicing exercises, I guess, but I don't think it's an entirely compulsory, necessary instrument. As for 1 and 3, 2 and 4, I think that tends to be dictated by the music you listen to. You develop a sense of knowing where the emphasis lies, so you can go anywhere you want.
Thanks, Mark. Cleveland, how do you become a virtuoso vocalist, and what is the most fun gig you've ever played on or watched?
A virtuoso. Don't believe the hype. The thing with me is when I first got into this music and discovered this music, I was really into the instrumentalists. I heard a cassette that had Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Bill Evans, and Clifford Brown. Was on the first jazz cassette that I ever heard, and I just fell in love with the sound of what I was hearing and the names, and I ran out to the shops and I just bought as many records as I could and listened and tried to sing along with these themes and solos, and then I started to get into what was happening else. The other stuff was happening on the record, so I try and sing along to the bass line, and I try and sing along to the drums, and I just try and take everything apart with my ear, and I did this for years, and I never listened to singers for many years. It was a long time later on that I discovered people like Ella and John Hendricks and Betty Carter. So my whole thing was, I want to do what they're doing. So I wanted to understand how they were thinking about harmony and rhythm, and I'll ask musicians sometimes, and they'll be like, "Oh man, just sing," and then the others that are showing me stuff, and then I'll get books, and then I found a fantastic teacher. I think I mentioned this to a few of you the other day, Eddie Harvey, fantastic pianist and teacher, and he started to teach me just some of the theory about harmony and chords and scales and melody and stuff like that. And so really, it's just I was just really diligent about my passion and love for the music, and just researching the history, going back all the way to people like Louis Armstrong and musicians from the sort of 20s all the way, and followed the music all the way up, and just really developed a love for the music and the sound and all the different musicians and instrumentalists. What was the other question? Something about being funky?
What is the most fun gig you've ever played on or watched?
What is the most funky I've ever played on? Oh, wow. I guess it's got to be fun gig.
Fun, yeah.
I'm sorry, fun gig. I guess it's got to be sitting in at Ronnie Scott's with Art Blakey. I sat in with the Messengers one night. Margaret Miller spoke to Art and said, get Cleveland. And I sat in on Moaning. I mean, I'm still floating. When you hear that kind of power behind you when you're singing, that kind of that shuffle, because that's that thing on Moaning, isn't it? That beat on that tune Moaning, and I just felt like I was lying in a king-size bed, and just felt I don't think I've ever had that feeling from anything else ever since. And I've had the opportunities to work with some really interesting people along my journey. But that memory of working with art, sitting in with the messengers is just, you know, life-changing. So.
Thanks for sharing that memory, Cleveland. Let's go to Laura now. Now, the question is, how important is it to have your own projects at a young age with your own age group or at your conservatoire?
Well, I think that if there's something inside of you that really wants to do that, then I think it's important to nourish that at any stage, really. I think sometimes I've met people and they seem a bit shy about their own music, and they're kind of concerned with like having an identity or whatever. But I think that identity comes through actually just having a go and finding musicians that you really love to play with. And, you know, places like this or a music college or any other musical community is a fantastic place to find people who may well really inform the way you write music, the way you play, and really inspire you. So for me, I never really thought about when I would do those things, or I never had a plan, and I still don't have a plan. I don't know, you know, when people ask me what do I hope to be doing in 5 years, I never know how to answer that, because I just don't know. But I think, yeah, it's really, really important that if you have that curiosity and drive to find a way to make it happen, yeah. So I don't know about
just
the stage.
do it. It sounds like you're saying just do it.
Yeah, and I think that actually the thing I said about the identity thing, I think that's a constantly growing thing, and I think the more you do it, the more you feel confident in your own thing, and the more perhaps a voice will emerge, and to not be too worried about what that is. Yeah.
Thank you, Laura. Mark, a similar question actually, but how important is it to have your own projects? Because you, of course, have led several projects, and the importance of that.
I mean, I guess a lot of that is kind of Laura's said it really, but I mean, I think it's about not being, I mean, I can remember when I started out, I felt under a lot of pressure to kind of sound like someone else, you know. I think it was, in the 80s, it was Michael Brecker that everyone was into, and I've always loved Michael Brecker, but there was no way that I could really play like Michael Brecker. So for me, it was kind of taking things from all these players that you love, that kind of resonate with you, you know, and there's plenty of things that resonate with me about Michael Brecker. And not to be afraid of just playing with your own sound and your own way, you know, and I think that it's very important to absorb the jazz language, you know, and start deconstructing it, you know. And for me, that's been quite a big thing with writing as well, that process, you know, of trying to just not worry about. I mean, this is perhaps something that you grow into, you know, the older you get. Perhaps it's a little too soon to be thinking of that, but I think the thing about getting a band together and trying to write your own tunes is brilliant, and it just pushes you onto that journey of who you are as a musician.
Thank you. Before I come to Liam, just to say this is my own personal question, but I'm sure it will inform this conversation we're having, which is I want all of you to think of one album that you absolutely must have in your collection as a musician, in your ilk, if you like. We'll do a fire round just in a few minutes. But Liam, to you, the question from the students is, what does music mean to you?
Holy blimey. What does music mean to me? Who is it who put that question?
take the Fifth Amendment.
Yeah, I know. I've been watching this program called The Good Wife recently, and it's all about, it's a sort of legal drama, and a lot of people at points like this, looking similarly nervous, say, I would like to take the fifth, which means you have a right not to answer the question. I'll try and say this in as brief a way as possible. I think it's... this is quite tricky. I think I'm by nature quite an introverted person, and I don't like talking into microphones, for example, but also I get kind of fed up of myself. And I think music gave me a way of communicating something to other people in a way that was less awkward than talking to them. I mean, I didn't... this has all gone very self-referential, but it felt more... For me, music doesn't have to mean anything. That's a precious commodity of music, is that it doesn't mean anything. You know, like some of you have played some of my tunes or maybe heard records that I've done. The tune titles don't really mean anything. I just like the sound of the words. I like the sound of the music. The physical process of making music, I think, is very therapeutic, and it's a way of communicating with other people that doesn't involve words, that doesn't involve meaning, but it involves some kind of communication, and it can be on a deep level, and it can be with people you've never spoken to before or met before. Wow, this is already a long answer. But yeah, I think that's it. There's something about the subconscious of it that I like, and also the thing that you can go into a room on your own and you can work on it and you can come out and feel like you've got somewhere, and you can do the same thing with other people and you can feel like you've established a kind of relationship, you've experienced some kind of connection with people. I think it's difficult to underestimate that. What have I left out? Nothing. Thank you.
Thank you for that opus, Liam. We come to Christine now, and Christine has come all the way from Canada to tutor on this course. What's the experience been like for you?
Oh, it's just been, I think I was surprised that, you know, when I was told about this program, and I was in conversation with ISSIE quite a bit about it, and she had this idea of what I was going to do here. I went, oh, okay, that'll be good. And then I heard these students, and I was actually quite moved at the level these students are at. So for me, it's been just a real pleasure to be around conscientious young people that are growing into this music in a way that I can't wait to see what happens in the future.
What is it like in Canada? I mean, is there a comparative?
Well, we talked about the other day a bit that Canada's a very horizontal country that's spread quite far apart. And there's 3 main centers, and they're very far apart from each other. So that's pretty well a region. It's very regionalized in a way. So I like living in Montreal because it's a really creative scene that bridges a European vibe with actually a bit more of an American vibe through the festivals and the people that come through. I've seen Dave Holland at least 20 times in my life, just sitting there very easily. So it's a great place to be for that. And I'm happy because I get to sort of, I don't know, chip away at one of my goals, which is just to express myself as freely as possible. And jazz is my muse that I get to work with doing that. So it's a nice place to do that. Very close to New York, too.
One of the things we talked about earlier when we did some filming was about gender and jazz. I wonder if you can comment on that and whether you found it challenging or whether it no longer matters what gender you are.
It's a question that comes at me more than I want it to. I wish everything was equal. I basically keep my head down and do my work, and once in a while I look up and go, has it changed? Oh, well. I mean, it's about individual personalities working together, and this music is about community, actually, to me. There's a lot of expression within community to the point of being family with some of the, literally I work with my family and I work with my friends. And I think it's very important for this next generation to really communicate and look around them and see what resources and opportunities they have to find more balance in this music. So that's sort of what I think about it, I guess.
Thank you, Christine. We're now going to, round of applause if you want. We're going to move on to alumni. Alex, Alex, you have you just finished at the Royal Welsh College. You're back here. What is it like? I mean, you're an alumni. What was the experience like for you when you came?
I did the course last year and then the short course the year before that. And I was I hadn't really played jazz before the short course. And it definitely changed my life in some ways. Like, I met so many amazing musicians. And I really felt inspired to practice. And I'd never really practiced before. And on the short course I was told, like, man, you need to do a lot of work if you want to get into music college. And I studying at Royal, so it's good. But I did the King's Place sessions as well, and they're amazing. And it was like kind of routine of going up to London and working with some awesome tutors and some awesome students, and like everyone around is like really supportive, and no one really cares of like how good someone is. They just want to play with someone, and that's really how it should be. I think it's because if you focus on like ability, then you're just putting more borders up for yourself. And jazz, as everyone has said, it's about community, and that's how it should be.
Thank you, Alex. And then just finally, Ben. Ben, you've just finished the Ambassadors Scheme. Tell us a bit about that. I mean, you're going to be teaching on the short course, which is just about to start, and you graduated from Birmingham. But what was the Ambassadors Scheme, and why did you want to take part in it?
Well, yes, I went on an NYJC 5 years ago, and I think 5 and 6 years ago, and met a load of great people, and studied with them, alongside them at Birmingham Conservatoire. And this year, so I've been graduated a year from Birmingham, and this year I took part in the Ambassadors Scheme with ISSIE, which involved going down to King's Place, and then there was a session beforehand, also in London. I'm based in Birmingham still, and we would it was teaching us how to teach, and we get to observe Laura and the other great teachers they have there, and we slowly came from totally beginners to teaching our own segments, and now I'm here, so I'm pleased to be here, and it was a good experience, and yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone. So this quick fire question, it's the only question that is left, which is the album you must have in your collection, whoever you are. I'm going to sadly have to start with you, so I hope you're all right.
That's okay. There's quite a lot to choose from, but for me, as a guitar player, Smoking at the Half Note, Wes Montgomery, with the Windsor Kelly Trio.
Nice.
I love it.
Just pass it on to Alex.
Kind of Blue.
Well, you have to choose something else now.
Well, I don't want to suck up to England, but really, I think the album that shifted my idea of sound was hearing in 1990 Kenny Wheeler, Music for Large and Small Ensembles, with Guess Who?
Already got that one.
Yeah.
I'm going to go a bit off-piste with this one. I've been thinking about it. If somebody tells you that you should really listen to a certain album, and you listen to it and you don't understand it at all and you think it's rubbish, buy it and then come back in 10 years and have another listen. Doesn't matter which one it is. But if somebody recommends something, there's probably something in it, but it might be that you don't like it yet. I suggest Pat Metheny and Ornette Coleman's Song X. That's quite a good one for that.
Thanks.
An album that influenced me from a playing point of view and a writing point of view is an album called The Individualism of Gil Evans, and it's quite an obscure record, but if you're interested in writing and orchestration, it's an amazing record, and there's some amazing Wayne Shorter on it as well.
Yeah, well, there's loads of, this is a tricky question because there's loads of great albums, as we know, and I could name it any number of like Miles albums, but I'm gonna say just something that really was a real moment for me, and would perhaps, if I was ever on Desert Island Discs, this would be one I would take. And it's by a Norwegian saxophone player called Trygve Seim. And if you want to know how to spell that, ask me later. But it's an album called Sangam on the ECM record label. And I've played a few people this week a track off that album. There's one particular track that, yeah, definitely changed everything for me from a writing and playing perspective, and just space and time and general life. It was good.
Thanks, Laura. Cleveland?
Yeah, definitely a tricky one. I'm going to say Duke Ellington's Blues in Orbit. That's the album. I think that's one of that piece, Blues in Orbit. I've probably listened to that more times than anything else. So yeah, Duke Ellington's Blues in Orbit.
Mark?
I assume we're talking jazz albums.
Well, I mean, yeah, the choice is yours, you know.
Okay. The very first album I owned as a teenager was an Earth, Wind and Fire album called I Am. And the impact that the music on that album had on me in so many ways is so much that I hope to one day form a similar kind of band and write similar kind of music. It's just, it has everything. It's groove-orientated music, but the arrangements, the orchestrations, the musicianship, it just impacted me in a massive way. So, Earth, Wind and Fire, I Am, from around 1979.
Thanks. Gareth?
Very tricky. Oh my God. But I think just one that's had as part of me growing up. My dad was obsessed with sort of worship the music. Really, he grew up trying to teach himself to play, and but there's one thing that was on a lot, and it was the kind of combined Charlie Parker Dial sessions from the late 40s, early 50s. In particular, tracks from that which were just on constantly when I was a baby growing up. So there's certain sounds which are just like the sound of just my entire childhood, basically. It's like I mean, in particular, my dad would make compilation tapes of all of Charlie Parker's breaks, every alternate take of his break on Night in Tunisia. Just that moment, and also just the sound of Miles playing Night in Tunisia head over that bass line. Lucky Thompson on that track. The whole feeling of those combined sessions is just it's got to be a must-have for me. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Cheers. An album that influenced me a lot is John McLaughlin album called Making Music, and it's got Harry Fraser, Treasure, Tree Lockger to Jan Garbarek, and I just think there's a fantastic atmosphere on it, and there's sort of a real deep beauty to the album.
Thank you, Dominic.
Christine took my first choice. Second choice, Ornette Coleman, The Shape of Jazz to Come.
If Kind of Blue is gone, I'll have ESP. I think that's just incredible. That's enough said, isn't it? Yeah. You want to hear what Dave wants to say.
Dave, what's your choice?
Why am I at the end of the choices? I just want to say, first of all, I think Kind of Blue, if you know, as far as an album to have in your collection, is the one to start with if it's your first jazz album, because first of all, it's amazing, first of all, simply, but it's so clear, the music. It's so beautifully constructed. It's accessible, but at the same time incredibly deep. And it has a collection of musicians on it who, when you listen to that record and you listen to those players, you'll follow them and see what they individually did, and it'll lead you on a journey through the whole history of the music and their connections. So I think as a starting point, it's an amazing album to start with. As far as the album that had an impact on me, not the first one, I already mentioned that, but I think I love Supreme, John Coltrane, because first of all, when I heard it, it had more or less just come out, and it was stunning, the change that it created in the music. It's powerful emotionally, it's presenting a new idea, but also it's got a deep, can I say, spirituality to it, which made me realize how much more music could be than just the notes and the rhythms, that it was something about life and being a human being.
Thanks, Dave. ISSIE?
Mine was, I don't know if it's available as a box set, but it was all the Loose Tubes albums. I was feeling quite displaced when I was sort of 21. I studied composition. I was really into Mahler and grand orchestration, but I was also really into people like Nina Hagen and Kate Bush, and then you know, the whole jazz canon. I grew up around jazz rock as well, so you know, Nucleus and Soft Machine and those sort of bands were really important, and I didn't know how to get them to all join up. I felt, you know, all this mixture was my personal choice, but how does that fit in the music business? And then I just suddenly heard this explosion of personalities, different ideas, and it just really, it gave me permission to be me, because I just heard, you know, Loose Tubes were grabbing hold of that for themselves. And it was such an eclectic mix, and you know, really celebrate that, and hope that we can play some of that music in our 10th birthday as well.
Well, please give a warm round of applause for our panelists this afternoon, who've been your tutors, of course, who you've jammed with, etc. And thank you for your attention. It's been lovely to be here.
Can we thank our host as well, Jamoke, please? Brilliant job.